With regard to the military alliances, all these things are great acts of danger. No right except to flee because we are not members of this council.
Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru once said, I want to say this because there are some people in this country and some people in other countries whose job in life appears to run down Krishna Menon because he is cleverer than they are, because his record of service for Indian freedom is far longer than theirs, and because he has worn himself out in the service of the nation. The power and glory of V.K. Krishna Menon is that he neither sought power nor cared for glory. Hailing from the historic city of Calicut in India, where Vasco da Gama landed more than 500 years ago, Krishna Menon's meteoric rise from obscurity to world fame and then to near oblivion records the tragic fate of an outstanding personality of the 20th century. But it means much more.
When, as an Indian, was a subject of the British Empire, he remained in Britain and fought for Indian independence against the British Empire. There are very few Indians who could claim that being a subject of the British, he went to Britain and there became a remarkable figure in organizing a freedom movement for India's liberation.
Krishna Menon's work in England was recognized very early on because he was given the freedom of the King St. Pancras, which is a very rare honor. He was the second man to receive it after George Bernard Shaw. Many people abroad have recognized him as a statesman, but in India he has always been forgotten.
A lot of people were a bit, if I may say so, envious of Krishna Menon's relationship with Pandit Nehru. I think Panditji liked Krishna Menon because Krishna Menon had a very clever mind and also had a very sophisticated mind. In my life, and I'm quite an elderly person, two people from India whom I thought had very sophisticated mind. One was Krishna Menon and the other was P.N. Huxer. Very clever and very sophisticated. And Nehru liked that. Panditji liked that here is a person who's not only brilliant and clever, but has a sophistication, which I think maybe because Krishna Menon was based in London, had a wider orbit of experience, if I may put it that way. He was a local councillor in Camden for many years. He knew what local politics, he knew what Britain meant, and so on. And Nehru liked that. And secondly, I think both of them leaned a little bit to the left. Both Nehru and Krishna Menon perhaps more, much more than Panditji.
Both Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru and Krishna Menon, they were really the original people who really worked for the Indian freedom, especially Krishna Menon in Britain.
was historic time in every sense. 2/3 of the world was under imperialist oppression, and Krishna Menon happened to be the right man at the right place to speak on behalf of the oppressed people across the world. In India, we had great men in his own time who spoke up for India. But Krishna Menon, as I said, was unique because he spoke up not only for India, but for 2/3 of the world, the people who had been denied the right even to exist. Imperialism was the watchword in those times. And Krishna Menon was the solitary figure in London who spoke up against the oppressive and unjust system that created poverty and slavery in India and elsewhere, in Asia and Africa and elsewhere. He was also, though a great fighter for freedom, was at the same time a fighter for peace.
They are now usually called the Colombo states, have also proclaimed this. So that from now on, we should hope to see in Asia the vindication of what has been called the collective peace system. That is to say, peace alliances in place of military alliances, where the area of peace will be extended and our ancient continent will be able to devote its energies to the construction of the and the contribution to civilization.
He advised Jawaharlal Nehru, the Prime Minister whose great friend he was, adopt non-alignment, because we are not for the British or against the British, we are not for the United States or against the United States, we are not for big powers, but we are independent in our own judgment on issues as they come up which affect the world's future.
His role in the freedom fight for Indian freedom was not properly recognized. I think one of the reasons was that despite the fact that he was a staunch nationalist, he always wore Indian clothes when he was in India, but never toted a Gandhian cap or khadi. And because he could not converse or make speeches in either Hindi or even in Malayalam, his native tongue, he was very much misunderstood and not properly appreciated. They never gave due credit to the work that he had put in England towards the Indian freedom.
ഞാൻ കുട്ടിയാകും പഠിക്കും അമ്മായിയുടെ കൂടെ ഉള്ളപ്പോൾ അവിടെ വീട്ടിലൊക്കെ വരും. അന്നൊക്കെ നല്ല ഇതായിരുന്നു, വളരെ ജോളിയായിരുന്നു അന്നൊക്കെ ആ കാലത്ത് മദ്രാസിൽ. അത് കഴിഞ്ഞ് പിന്നെ അദ്ദേഹം ഇവിടെ എറണാകുളം അവർ വീട്ടിൽ വന്ന് ഇവിടെ വരാറുണ്ട്. എന്നുവെച്ചാൽ അമ്മായി അയാളുടെ ഒടുക്കത്തെ സിസ്റ്ററാണ് പത്മാവതി അമ്മ, കൃഷ്ണമേനൻ്റെ ഒടുക്കത്തെ സിസ്റ്ററെ എൻ്റെ അമ്മാവനാണ് മാരി ചെയ്തത്. അങ്ങനെ ആ പരിചയമുണ്ട്. ഞങ്ങളോടൊക്കെ വളരെ ഇതായിട്ട് ആയിരുന്നു, വളരെ നല്ല ഒരു പെരുമാറ്റം. പക്ഷേ കുറച്ച് സ്ട്രിക്റ്റാണ്. പിന്നെ ഇടയ്ക്കിടയ്ക്ക് ചായ കുടിക്കണം, അതൊരിതുണ്ട്. അതിങ്ങനെ കൃത്യത്തിനൊക്കെ ഇങ്ങനെ വേണം.
The beginning and end of colonialism has got a Calicut connection. In 1498, Vasco da Gama began colonialism by setting foot in the Indian subcontinent on the shores of Calicut. And in 1961, Portugal, the country from which Vasco da Gama came, Portugal lost its last colony in Goa from India thanks to somebody from Calicut, Bengalil Krishna Menon.
Krishna Menon's contribution to India cause is setting up the India League, bringing in British parliamentarians, British opinion farmers, etc. Is almost a legacy and a history which no Indian can afford to forget.
Krishna Menon fully deserves acknowledgement of all his different achievements and characteristics. I first came across him as early as 1948, when he was the very first High Commissioner of Independent India in London. I remember various other High Commissioners in the days of the British Raj, people like Sir Firoz Khan Noon, Sir Azizul Haq, Sir Samuel Ranganathan. But they were there as appointees of the British government, whereas Krishna Menon was the first High Commissioner appointed by the government of India, of independent India. And I think one of the reasons, in my thinking, why he was so strong about his personality and his views is that because he wanted people to realize that unlike his predecessors, he was representing India which was independent and India which had no subservience or feelings, although he was very pro-British in a number of ways, no feelings of any subservience towards the British government.
He was a socialist by conviction. He was a labor leader. But more than all, he fought for Indian independence in England. That is remarkable. Many people fight for India's independence from India, but very few people you can find fighting for Indian independence from the country which is holding India under subjection, that is the British Empire. Eventually he became the ambassador, Indian ambassador in England. And it's curious that he managed to see that the Indian embassy is housed in a place which was part of the Queen's Buckingham Palace premises. Now, to confine him to India is unjust because he was a global figure. He made one of the longest speeches ever in history in the United Nations.
With regard to the military alliances, all these things are great acts of danger. No right except to plead because we are not members of this council. We cannot give you counsel. You have asked us to express our opinions. And our opinion is that this is a step fraught with danger.
Hours and hours he spoke and people listened, and this man thundering away regardless of time. His power of speech was so great that nobody could miss the great words he uttered. But he was not confined to Kashmir. He was not confined even to Indian liberation and Indian problems. But he was the builder of many policies which are basic to the world and basic to Indian progress or comity of nations. Non-alignment, one of the great assets of Krishna Menon by way of contribution to India's foreign policy. Non-alignment was his creation.
Krishna Menon also tried to fight an election, first as a councillor, then as an MP, though didn't succeed. But he certainly sowed the seeds of the Indian movement to this. And I'm sure at that time, which this was a little bit before my time, when they were colleagues in this discussion, etc. But they were both very much in touch. Nehru, after finishing his law in this country, went back to India. Krishna Menon stayed there. They were two different personalities, but they had a common cause.
Among all other things, he was a man of great principles, a man of great refinement, and a man for the future.
Mr. Krishna Menon's contribution to a literary world in this country, that's in Britain, and you can say the world, has been tremendous. It was revolutionary. Because until Krishna Menon and his friend Alan came on the scene, to have a book, it was something like a luxury. It was almost impossible for an ordinary person, you see. And they started these Penguin publications, which was affordable almost for everybody, and that revolutionized the whole literary world of Britain, and I can say again that the world also.
He had a great love for education and literature. He was the person who first conceived the idea of Penguin series of books.
So I've been working for Pearson, who is one of the sister companies of Penguin and Pelican, and I recently learnt that Krishna Menon was one of the founders of Penguin. I never knew that, and it's now really interesting to know that he was one of the founders of such a great company that I now work closely with. And he did so much to make books available to all the normal people, and to stop making books a luxury only for privileged people.
Let me bow in respect a great Indian personality of the 20th century. I have the greatest admiration for him.
Regarding my association with the memories of Krishna Menon was during my interview for the civil services examination. Normally students who appear for this exam are asked, who do you think is the greatest son your state has produced? I was asked who was the greatest son of Kerala, and I took a chance and answered V.K. Krishna Menon, though I knew very well that it is going to be a highly controversial answer. And true to my expectations, the entire interview board immediately turned to me and said, don't you think he was responsible for India's debacle in the China war? And then I had to explain what I thought of Krishna Menon. I explained how his contribution to India cannot be just measured in terms of his function as a defense minister, but dated back to his role in the India League, his role in the non-aligned movement, in ensuring world peace and disarmament and freedom for various countries in Africa and Asia.
Indeed, wherever there was an international dispute where two nations fought, there was tension, people were asking, where is Krishna Menon? Where is Krishna Menon?
Regarding the period where India was at war with China and Krishna Menon was held responsible for so many small failures and larger ones, I think perhaps people were unfair to him. I personally was too far removed. By that time I was living in London, had very little contact with high-powered people like Krishna Menon or Panditji. They were at a different level, frankly, altogether. But one would read about it in the papers, and one felt that he was pilloried perhaps far too much, because he wasn't the only one who was responsible for the war with China.
Ultimate tribute to Krishna Menon in our sad world where arms accumulate and men decay will be to reclaim him from the dusty archives of history and bring hope to the younger generation.
Once Mahatma Gandhi mentioning about Tilak, he is dead. No, it is blasphemy to say he is dead. He lives in the hearts, in the minds of millions of people. Same thing can be applied to Krishna Menon. Krishna Menon is dead formally, physically. Every mortal must die. But then it is blasphemy to say that Krishna Menon is dead. He is immortal. He is, as long as India's freedom remains, Krishna Menon will also be remembered.
They are now usually called the Colombo states, have also proclaimed this, so that from now on we should hope to see in Asia the vindication of what has been called the collective peace system. That is to say, peace alliances in place of military alliances, where the area of peace will be extended and our ancient continent will be able to devote its energies to the construction of the